This is not a random video, and you did not click this by accident. If you've been praying, waiting, hoping for clarity, and all you received was silence, this message is for you. God's silence does not mean abandonment, and it does not mean delay without purpose. Sometimes, silence is the final step before everything changes. The question people are afraid to ask. Let's ask the question most believers whisper quietly. Why does God go silent exactly when I need Him most? You prayed sincerely. You tried to do the right thing. You corrected your behavior. You became more aware, more faithful, more intentional. And then, nothing. No sign, no answer, no direction, just silence. For many people, this silence hurts more than suffering, because pain at least feels like something. Silence feels like being ignored. Today, we are not going to cover this up with religious slogans or quick comfort. We are going to understand why God becomes quiet before He transforms a life. Part 1. Why silence comes after prayer. One of the most misunderstood spiritual moments is the silence that follows sincere prayer. People expect immediate reassurance, but God often responds with stillness. Why? Because silence forces attention. When God speaks constantly, people depend on words. When God goes silent, people develop discernment. Silence is not absence. Silence is focus. It strips away emotional noise and reveals what truly matters. Many prayers are answered, but not with words. They are answered with preparation. Why God does not explain what He is about to do. If God explained everything beforehand, you would resist the process, fear would interfere, attachment would block obedience. So instead of explanation, God creates space. Space for growth. Space for detachment. Space for maturity. Silence is where dependency breaks and trust begins. Part 2. Why God removes comfort before change. Another painful truth. God often removes comfort before He introduces transformation. Comfort creates stability, but stability can prevent movement. If God kept everything familiar, same emotions, same people, same routines, same reassurance, you would never leave what no longer fits. Silence disrupts emotional comfort. It forces questions you avoided. It reveals weaknesses you ignored. It brings honesty to the surface. This is not cruelty. This is preparation. Why this feels like abandonment. From a human perspective, silence feels personal. You think, did I do something wrong? Is God disappointed? Am I being punished? But God's silence usually means the opposite. It means you are ready to move without constant guidance. Parents stop holding the bike only when the child is ready to ride. God does the same with the soul. Part 3. The role of waiting in change. Waiting is not wasted time. Waiting builds emotional strength, exposes false dependence, teaches patience without explanation. Most people fail in silence because they try to escape it. They fill it with noise. They distract themselves. They rush decisions. But silence is where direction forms quietly. Change is conceived in stillness before it appears in action. Most people ignore this part, and that's why nothing changes. They break silence too early and miss what was forming. Part 4. Why God's silence tests identity, not faith. Most people believe God's silence is a test of faith, but that is not true. Faith already exists. Otherwise, you would not be praying. Silence tests identity. It reveals who you are when no reassurance comes, no sign appears, no confirmation arrives. When God speaks, people feel chosen. When God is silent, people feel exposed. And that exposure is intentional, because many people follow God only when they feel seen, comforted, or rewarded. Silence removes emotional reinforcement. It asks one question: who are you when no one responds? This is where transformation begins. Why many people fail in this phase? They try to prove themselves. They overpray, they panic, they interpret silence as rejection, and in doing so, they abandon the process. Silence is not distance, it is depth. God does not pull away. He steps back so you can step forward. Part 5. Why silence comes right before breakthrough. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths in faith. Silence often comes right before change, not after, before. Why? Because change requires separation. Before God changes your situation, He changes your attachment to the situation. If God spoke clearly before the shift, fear would rise, control would interfere, resistance would form. Silence allows change to happen without negotiation. Most breakthroughs are ruined because people demand reassurance instead of surrender. Biblical pattern: without preaching. Moses, silence before the sea opened. Joseph, silence before elevation. Jesus, silence before resurrection. God's greatest movements are preceded by stillness, not explanation. Stillness. Part 6. Why God removes emotional support during silence. Another painful layer of silence. People stop understanding you. Friends go quiet. Support feels distant. Encouragement disappears. This is not coincidence. God removes emotional crutches so you can walk without leaning. Because what is coming next requires strength, not dependence. Silence builds internal stability, and internal stability cannot be borrowed from others. Why this feels like abandonment. Humans associate love with response. So when response disappears, we assume love has ended. But God's love does not express itself through constant reassurance. It expresses itself through preparation. Part 7. What you are meant to learn in silence. Silence teaches what noise never can. It teaches patience without explanation, trust without confirmation, obedience without clarity. It strips ego. It removes performance. It kills spiritual pride. In silence, you stop trying to impress God. You simply remain. And remaining is the foundation of real change. Part 8. Why many people sabotage change too early. This is critical. Most people break silence prematurely. They rush decisions, force outcomes, seek validation, speak too soon. They interrupt what was forming. Silence is a womb. Break it early, and growth dies undeveloped. God does not delay. People interrupt. Mid-script reset. Authority line reinforced. Most people ignore this part, and that's why nothing changes. They confuse silence with failure and abandon the process too early. Part 9. How to respond when God is silent. This is not the time to panic, overthink, explain yourself, demand clarity. This is the time to simplify, remove distractions, observe your reactions, allow detachment. Silence reveals attachment. What bothers you most in silence is what God is loosening. Part 10. What silence is removing from you. Silence removes false confidence, emotional dependency, identity built on approval, need for control, and removal hurts. But what remains is unshakable. Part 11. Why clarity comes after silence, not during. God does not explain the storm while you are inside it. He explains it once you are strong enough not to be afraid. Clarity after survival builds wisdom. Clarity before survival builds fear. This is why answers come late or never. If you are in silence right now, this is not rejection. This is preparation. God is not ignoring you. He is reshaping you. And if this message reached you today, it is because you were ready to hear it. Not earlier, not later. Your life is not on hold. It is being rebuilt quietly. And when the silence lifts, you will understand why it had to be this way. If this answered a question you have been carrying quietly, keep this message close. And if someone you know is walking through the same silence, let them hear it too. Clarity comes to those who wait without panic.